Even Breyer's retiring from the Supreme Court. Shannon Bream told us last night that multiple sources told her Breyer was not planning to announce his retirement yesterday, and they described him as upset with how this has played out. But he went in with the president today and made the announcement. But the White House Communications Office is a mess, and old Peppermint Patty Psaki needs to get her act together. But back to the point. It is true. And good old Uncle Joe immediately said he would appoint a black woman to the court. I'm sure there are plenty of qualified black women to appoint, but there's a small problem here. It is against the law to hire government employees based solely on race or gender, no exceptions. But I digress. What will the Republican senators do if Joe appoints a leftist extremist to the bench? Well, Senator Lindsey Graham's already indicated he'll support the appointment, so there's that. And then, can the Democrats count on Joe Manchin and Kristen Sinema after they've been attacked incessantly over the filibuster flop and Build Back Better debacle? We'll have to wait and see, I guess. Here's a video of the announcement of Justice Breyer and President Biden confessing he'll use race and gender to make his decision.
Words about the critically important work of selecting his successor. Choosing someone to sit in the Supreme Court, I believe, is one of the most serious constitutional responsibility a president has. Our process is going to be rigorous. I will select a nominee worthy of Justice Breyer's legacy of excellence and decency. While I've been studying candidates' backgrounds and writings, I've made no decision except one. The person I will nominate will be someone with extraordinary qualifications, character, experience, and integrity. And that person will be the first black woman ever nominated to the United States Supreme Court. It's long overdue in my view. I made that commitment during the campaign for president, and I will keep that commitment. I will fully do what I said I'd do. I will fulfill my duty to select a justice, not only with the Senate's consent, but with his advice. You've heard me say in other nomination processes that the Constitution says seek the advice and consent, but the advice as well of the Senate. I'm going to invite senators from both parties to offer their ideas and points of view. I'll also consult with leading scholars and lawyers. And I'm fortunate to have advising me in this selection process Vice President Kamala Harris. She's an exceptional lawyer, former Attorney General of the state of California, a former member of the Senate Judiciary Committee. I will listen carefully to all the advice I'm given, and I'll study the records and former cases carefully. I'll meet with the potential nominees, and it is my intention to announce my decision before the end of February. I have made no choice at this point. Once I select a nominee, I will ask the Senate to move promptly on my choice. In the end, I will nominate a historic candidate, someone who's worthy of Justice Breyer's legacy, and someone who, like Justice Breyer, will provide incredible service on the United States Supreme Court. Justice Breyer, on behalf of all the American people, I want to thank you and your family for your tremendous service to our nation. I'm going to yield the floor to you, Mr. Justice.
Thank you, Mr. President. That was terribly nice. And believe me, I hold it right here. It's wonderful. And I thought about what I might say to you, and I'd like to say something I enjoy is talking to high school students, grammar school students, college students, even law school students, and they'll come around and ask me what is it you find particularly meaningful about your job? What sort of gives you a thrill? And that's not such a tough question for me to answer. It's the same thing. Day one, almost up to day I don't know how many. But what I say to them is, look, I sit there on the bench, and after we hear lots of cases, and after a while, the impression, it takes a while, I have to admit, But the impression you get is, as you well know, this is a complicated country. There are more than 330 million people. And my mother used to say it's every race, it's every religion, and she would emphasize this, and it's every point of view possible. And it's a kind of miracle. When you sit there and see all those people in front of you, people that are so different in what they think, and yet they've decided to help solve their major differences under law. And when the students get too cynical, I say, go look at what happens in countries that don't do that. And that's there. I can't take this around in my job. People have come to accept this Constitution, and they've come to accept the importance of a rule of law. And I want to make another point to them. I want to say, look, of course people don't agree, but we have a country that is based on human rights, democracy, and so forth. But I'll tell you what Lincoln thought, what Washington thought, and what people today still think. It's an experiment. It's an experiment. That's what they said. And Joanne paid each of our grandchildren a certain amount of money to memorize the Gettysburg Address. And the reason that what we want them to pick up there, and what I want those students to pick up, if I can remember the first two lines, is that 7 years ago, our fathers created upon this here a new country, a country that was dedicated to liberty and the proposition that all men are created equal. Conceived in liberty, those are his words, and dedicated to the proposition that all men are created equal. He meant what he meant. And we are now engaged in a great civil war to determine whether that nation, or any nation so conceived and so dedicated, can long endure. See, those are the words I want to see. An experiment. And that's what he thought. It's an experiment. And I found some letters that George Washington wrote where he said the same thing. It's an experiment. That experiment existed then because even the liberals in Europe, they're looking over here and they're saying it's a great idea in principle, but it'll never work. But we'll show them it does. That's what Washington thought. And that's what Lincoln thought. And that's what people still think today. And I say, I want.
Well, there you have it, folks. The person occupying the Oval Office confesses he's going to use race and gender to pick his nominee, and that is the primary factor. As far as Justice Breyer goes, interesting man. Somebody like me may think he's a liberal, but listen carefully to his words that he used there, because the New Democrats, the Marxist Democrats, they don't like those words from Abraham Lincoln and the Gettysburg Address, that we brought on forth on this continent a nation conceived in liberty and dedicated that all men are created equal, because the Marxist Democrats buy into things like the 1619 Project, which says the country was founded in 1619 and is racist, and everything about the Constitution and Declaration of Independence was racist. So they're glad to see Justice Breyer go. I may not have agreed with any of his decisions at all, but I'm not glad to see somebody that believes in those ideas, like I believe in those ideas and have dedicated my life and even offered to sacrifice my life for them while serving in the U.S. military. I am sad to see him go, because what replaces him is likely to be a leftist extremist Marxist that believes and hates this country and hates you and I because we love it. Pay attention.